Live from SABC studios in Auckland Park, Johannesburg. Welcome to this week's final edition of the Watchdog. My name is William Voko. Thank you for tuning in. Now, over 1.2 million South Africans are in limbo as we speak, as the Nelson Mandela Metro collapses yet again. This time over who should be the city's manager. As things stand, two people are both claiming to be legitimate city managers, both issuing orders. One councillor took to social media bemoaning the chaos he had seen. Some municipal offices were this week locked and chained. Staff and councillors were barred from entering municipal premises. Business delegations from outside the city arriving for their appointments only to be turned back as there were no people to meet them. So tonight we speak to the two bulls in the crawl, the ANC and the DA, as well as some of the parties that are in coalition arrangements with the big two. The Watchdog starts now. Morne Steyn is the leader of the Democratic Alliance's caucus in the council. Luyolo Ngagula leads the ANC in the region. Luxolo Namete is a councillor of the United Democratic Movement. Gentlemen, good evening. Thanks very much for coming through this evening. Very briefly, I'm going to ask each one of you what your understanding of what has been going on this week and what lies behind it. Let me start with you, Morne Steyn.
Evening, Vuyo, and thank you for having me. Just to correct you, I'm the caucus spokesperson of the DA caucus in Nelson Mandela Bay, not the leader.
Okay.
But thank you in any event.
Apologies for that.
Not at all. Vuyo, yes, it's been a chaotic week, as you've alluded to, and unfortunately, it's the citizens of this metro that are actually suffering as a result of same. Well, in short, if I can sum up the situation, a council meeting had been called for Wednesday morning, the 23rd. It was centered in the name of the speaker, Gary van Niekerk of the Northern Alliance, and it was sent on Monday, if I recall correctly, the notification for said meeting. Meeting was subsequently ostensibly cancelled. We're not certain at this stage on whose instructions. We can only assume it is Dr. Ntwazi's instructions to cancel the council meeting, as she'd issued an instruction to the IEC that the positions of the Northern Alliance are vacant, which in effect would mean that the speaker's position would be vacant. We wouldn't have a speaker. Now, this all stems from the fact that last week at the council meeting of the 16th, Dr. Ntwazi was ostensibly, I say ostensibly again, elected as the city manager of Nelson Mandela Bay, despite the fact that there was no quorum at that meeting. My party, as well as various other parties, coalition partners, even the coalition partners of the ANC had left the meeting, and as such the meeting was not correct, and any resolutions taken as a result of same is completely illegal and unlawful. So we do not recognize the appointment of Dr. Ntwazi as the acting city manager. As such, her instructions which she issued further on is suspect, to say the least, and as such we convened the council meeting. We said any instructions which she issued to have the speaker removed and not give effect to the speaker's call for a meeting on Wednesday, which in effect was to pass the adjustment budget, which stands to lose the city 285 million rand should we not do so. In any event, the meeting was called and we proceeded to rescind the decision for the appointment of Dr. Ntwazi, and we appointed Mr. Anele Kaba as the acting city manager of Nelson Mandela Bay. This has led to the two centers of power, so to speak, who are disputing each other's authority. And if it wasn't such a serious situation, it would be quite comical, as both have actually sent suspension letters and insubordination letters to each other.
Mr. Ngagula, is your version of events different from that of Mr. Steyn?
Thanks, I hope I am audible. My version of events is totally different because there's a lot that Mr. Steyn deliberately omits. That one, I will deal with facts here. That what we're confronted with in Nelson Mandela Vuyo is a fight back from a criminal, corrupt network which is enabled by the Democratic Alliance, and at the center of it is its provincial leader, the former mayor, ukunqababhanga. That is what is at play here. Here are the facts, Vuyo. One, a council meeting was convened to deal with the appointment of a city manager. It is in that meeting wherein the Democratic Alliance, the Economic Freedom Fighters, decided to march out once the item had been put. At the point of the item had been put and voted for by 54 councillors, and there was a 50+1, 61 councillors present in the room, thus therefore constituting a majority, or a quorum rather, and a simple majority. The item was carried over, and thus by implication a city manager appointed. But rather now what we dealt with post the fact is a reneging from some of the political parties against a council decision outside of due process, because we must make the point that every decision that council takes is not alpha and omega. It is subjected to scrutiny, to be scrutinized against the law around its correctness or incorrectness. What puzzles me is the fact that if the DA or any other political party has a view around the local standing or the legitimacy of the appointment of the city manager, why is it that they've not approached the courts? They've not done so because they know that on a factual and a substantive basis, there's nothing untowards the appointment of the city manager. The second issue is that they coerced other political parties into wrongfully convening a council meeting, which was called by the former speaker, Gary van Niekerk, who is no longer a councillor in the city because a vacancy had been declared with the IEC. And thus, they also sought an interdict without notifying the respondents, which is the municipality and the city manager. And that was appealed and overturned by the High Court in Port Elizabeth. Those are the facts that Mornay now does not state here to society at large, and he deliberately omits them because he knows that the meeting that they had convened and they purportedly appointed a acting city manager in the form of Ukaba, who's their corrupt enabler, by the way, Vuyo, was nothing but an informal gathering. It has no local standing in terms of the council rules of order. It has no local standing or standing in terms of the law itself. So what we're confronted with here, Vuyo, is a fight back against the commitment that an organization such as ours, the African National Congress, had made during the elections campaign that we will dismantle corrupt networks in the municipality. So you see tenets of that responding to that or reacting to that particular point. And they do not want a stabilization of the administration, which the ANC is at the forefront of championing. It is a sad day, what was witnessed today, wherein councillors of the EFF were mobilized, female councillors were mobilized by these criminal elements, which is a pure display of male chauvinism, which the EFF males are part of, the men in the EFF are part of, the men in the DA are part of, and many other elements which are corrupt in nature, to stage a sit-in in the office of the city manager. So what is trending on social networks, if anything, is not a city manager being kicked out of the institution, but rather the city manager requested the presence of SABC so as to escort her out because she did not feel safe. And that is an act which we condemn as the African National Congress without any fear or favor, that no woman must be intimidated inside the workplace or outside the workplace, especially by male chauvinists. So from our viewpoint as the African National Congress, it is an issue which we do not take lightly too, because if anyone wants to subject a decision of council to scrutiny, they reserve the right to do so. If anything, we've made a clarion call as the African National Congress to all parties in council to approach the court so as to, one, deal with the question of the legitimacy or whether was the appointment of the city manager in line with the processes of the institution. The city manager we're speaking of, Vuyo, here, is a person who was interviewed by an independent panel, is a person who, as per the report, received the highest scores, is a person, as per independent assessments, is the most suitably qualified candidate. So what the other political parties and the DA, in essence, wanted to coerce the ANC into doing is to voting for a person who's not suitably qualified. And that's against the principles that the African National Congress stands for, around professionalization of the public sector, around identifying the best women, men and women to serve in the public service. And what the DA does not state here is that in a council meeting, not one, but two legal opinions were obtained and presented in council, which advised against the action that the DA and the other parties were against, and they opted to use numbers to vote against the reason and take illegal decisions. That is why the DA will come here and Morne will not state that council had received legal advice from a legal opinion, but he omits that because they are part of a criminal network which wants to see this particular city regressing. If anything, the African National Congress will continue in its endeavors to want to stabilize not only the political leadership of the city, but the administrative leadership, because we understand that the precursor to service delivery is a stable political and administrative environment. And it's a principle that as an independent organization within the context of a coalition, that we will fall on our sword if we have to as African National Congress, because it is a principle and we are guided by the facts, we are guided by the law, we are guided by what is right. And what is right is what will service the residents of the metro.
Okay,
so we are seeing spades.
Let me ask you to stop. Let me ask you to stop right there, Luyolo. Let me stop you. Right there. You've raised so many issues, and we need to go through. Some of them a little more like systematically. I'm going to come back. To you, Morne. Let's start with the position of the acting city manager. We saw videos this morning, social networks, of Mwazi leaving her offices in the municipal buildings. She was being, I hope we want to be able to play those, she was being escorted by police. Now, Luyolo then says that she actually requested the police to accompany her out of the building, whether she was fearing for her safety or whatever the case may have been. I'm sure it may just be difficult for us to establish that right now. But what is your understanding, Morne, of her position and standing?
Yes, firstly, I'd just state that the DA condemns in the strongest possible terms any harassment or threat to any of our staff members within the institution. That is absolutely unacceptable that this situation has arisen, but it's unfortunately a result of the years of absolutely no accountability and the lawlessness which the ANC has allowed to occur within the city. So I completely condemn the situation where a staff member feels threatened in any manner at all. But I believe that the council meeting of Wednesday the 23rd is completely valid, despite Ms. Nkakula's assertions to the opposite. In fact, a declaratory order was requested. It was one of the resolutions made at this meeting to declare the provisions of that council meeting valid and in effect in order to put this to bed. If you have 5 attorneys, you'll have 5 different opinions at the end of the day. So the legal opinions Ms. Nkakula refers to, quite frankly, I don't believe carries the weight that he tries to attach to it. And as such, we believe that the city manager was certainly not. Now, could you not challenge it then, if that is the case? Yes, certainly, but I don't believe it to be necessary. A review could have been brought with regards to this matter, but we've had a valid council meeting and council's made a resolution to rescind the appointment. A review is no longer necessary. We've actually gone to the proper procedures in order for council to have an acting city manager appointed. And let me make this point. A city manager and a permanent competent city manager is something the city desperately requires.
But why do you say that?
Well, as I've just stated, the years of lawlessness and the rampant corruption we found within this institution over the years, the issues with our water supply not being attended to, we had people being hospitalized as a result of unsafe water conditions in the city. And this is the result of absolutely no top leadership and accountability within the institution. And you can only do so when you have a permanently appointed, competent city manager who will deal with these matters and would be accountable to the residents of this metro should they not fulfill their duties.
Well, Luyolo Nkakula says that's exactly what they have done, which you are against, if I heard him correctly.
We against
the appointment of Ms. Kwazi as the permanent city manager, which...
With all due respect to Mr. Nkakula, no matter how he likes to spin this, there was not a quorum at this meeting where Dr. Nkwazi was appointed, and my colleague from the UDM will attest to the same. There was not a quorum present at that meeting.
Okay.
And trying to actually ram an appointment through council is absolutely unacceptable.
Okay, let's say, Mr. Ngakula, that meeting had no standing from what Mr. Steyn is saying. That meeting did not quorate.
Vuyo, that is a figment of his imagination. Video evidence is there that meeting duly quorated. Video evidence to an extent of even the very same speaker, the former speaker, who now reneges against that very same council decision, pronouncing that the item is carried. In that video, the chairperson of the EFF, who's a councillor, I will share it with you. You can see that he's in the venue, he's in a warm body. He was the plus one which was required to give that particular meeting that quorum. But we again, I reiterate the fact that the Democratic Alliance thinks that we're in Italy, Sicily here, where the Sicilian mafia and that state institutions such as a municipality could just be run as if they are in a tavern. These are institutions which are governed by law, because one, after the due appointment by council of a city manager, there was a due signing of a contract, rights have been accrued. Mornay Steyn is accused of being a lawyer. And I say he's accused because he's supposed to know these things. I'm not even a qualified legal practitioner, but this is paralegal knowledge, Vuyo. So what you have here is the Democratic Alliance, in essence, which has been refusing to pass an adjustment budget in this city, which will enable service delivery, playing politics and playing to the gallery. And the unfortunate thing is that there is no political organization in Nelson Mandela, which is the absolute political authority, wherein now, where parties rely on the cooperation amongst each other and the collaboration, because it is a coalition government. And those are the realities that the residents of Nelson Mandela are confronted with. The reality is that the reason why there's an accounting officer in council who sits next to a speaker in council, the reason why legal opinions are obtained and provided to council is to give guidance to council itself, so that when public representatives discharge their fiduciary duties, they're able to do so in a guided manner. It amuses me today that Mornay now will dismiss all of that because the DA has defined and has been exposed that it operates outside the ambit of the law itself. By the way, what I call on, and I call him out, Vuyo, here on national television, he must also dare say around the issue, because they never pronounced any issue around the process itself at an administrative level. They never raised any dispute around the process. They're the ones who affirmed the process, but rather they've noisified the question of the city manager, because they do not want to see a black, capable woman leading this particular city. They've got no substantive reason as to why they would not support her, but this is the very same Democratic Alliance which would want to preach professionalization of the public sector. So they've been exposed here that they are part of the criminal network which seeks to collapse this particular city. But the unfortunate thing is that the residents now are bearing the brunt of this. And that is a deep question that the African National Congress as an organization is going to deeply reflect and ponder around. Because the ANC, in as much as it is not an absolute political authority, will never be coerced by any organization or any individual to taking decisions which are unprincipled, to taking decisions which are outside the law.
Okay.
So we are dealing here with criminals, Vuyo.
Okay.
We've got a total disregard for service delivery, who undermine the very same electorate which has basically put us into power, if I use that term loosely. Because the state, and particularly the local state, is the immediate sphere of government that our people know. Okay. The poor and the downtrodden. Okay. And it is an instrument which to us as African National Congress is an instrument to transform the lives of our people, and it can never be correct on any given day that it is mismanaged and sent into disarray by criminal elements of the Democratic Alliance and their friends. Okay,
Leon. Now let me bring into the conversation Luxolo Nameto, who is a councillor there and of the United Democratic Movement. Luxolo, very briefly, what is your understanding of what is going on here and the source of the conflict we've seen playing itself out throughout this week?
Thank you very much, Vuyo. But Vuyo, before I go direct to the issue that we are discussing today, I want to draw a picture for you. Vuyo, we are in a situation where ANC is becoming a big brother.
Your line keeps giving us problems.
Can you hear me now, Vuyo?
Okay, let's try again. Yes, continue.
I'm saying, Vuyo, I want to draw a picture for you and your viewers. In this coalition that we have entered with the ANC, we have noticed that the ANC now is trying to come back to its own tricks of becoming a bully big brother in this coalition. You will find out, Vuyo, in Nelson Mandela that issues of municipality are discussed in Florence Matomela, which is the ANC building. Even surprised why is the executive mayor not part of this debate, because for starters, Loyolo Makula is not even the councillor, and never been a councillor before, but he's here discussing items that agree, which is confidential in terms of council. However, Vuyo, let's start by saying who is this one that we are discussing about. You know, Vuyo, I hear that Vuyo is talking about criminal network, which I found strange because ANC is the only party that is defending criminal activities. You will find out Dr. Nwazi is currently figured in the final report of the SIU for a financial misconduct in the setting of the personal protective clothing, PPE. That's why parties, Vuyo, don't want this candidate, or Dr. Nwazi. As we all are aware, the recommendations regarding the SIU report were tabled in this council by the executive mayor, who doesn't even know whether it's dark or there is light when it comes to council business. The executive mayor pursued that the council should ignore the recommendation of the SIU. It is on the minutes of the council. ANC is saying that we should ignore the recommendations of the SIU report. SIU, which is a body which was appointed by the president.
Okay.
We find it that the ANC is undermining even the president. But without going further, the regulations of the council are clear. 11.5 states that any misinterpretation of a failure to disclose information contaminated in regulation 3 and 4 is breach of the code of conduct of municipal staff as provided in Schedule 2 of the Act shall be dealt with in terms of disciplinary regulation. Vuyo, Dr. Nwazi never disclosed that there is a dark cloud hanging on top of her, which is the SIU report. Vuyo, indeed, on the 16th of March 2022, the UDM submitted a motion that says we cannot appoint Dr. Nwazi as a city manager, and also Dr. Nwazi should be submitted in a disciplinary process, because the SIU report states it very clear. Vuyo, the mayor of the municipality, failed to implement the recommendations of the SIU report.
Okay, now
Vuyo, 67 councillors of the Nelson Mandela on that meeting of the 16th March voted in favor of the motion that was brought by UDM. The motion was carried through that Dr. Nwazi must be subjected to a disciplinary.
Can I then ask you to pause right there? Can I ask you to pause right there and then go to Luyolo? Lutolo has just given us the reasons that those you say are opposed to the appointment of a black woman have against this particular candidate. Why would you go against SIU recommendations and a legitimate process, a disciplinary process that should have been undergone before she can actually be appointed?
No, thanks, Vuyo. Let me make an admission that Luxolo is correct that I am not a councillor. I've never been a councillor.
No, it wasn't for lack of trying.
I must remind him about
because we did approach the office to get the mayor to come here, yes. But I mean without success, and that's yes. how I ended up with you. Yeah.
No, it's fine. But I'll remind him about a thing or two around the very same institution that he's serving in. That one, when an allegation is made against a senior manager, such as Dr. Mwazi, who was executive director of Desirec, Sports Arts and Culture in the municipality, they must be subjected to a process of a disciplinary board, wherein an independent board will make a determination around that particular conduct and establish whether, and report to council, whether is there basis to institute disciplinary processes or not. Going back to the question of the SIU, Vuyo, a draft
wait, before you go to the SIU, before you get to the SIU, let's start with the disciplinary process. Why, I just wanted to finish your thought on that one. Why was that process not undertaken? What is your understanding of the reasons why that disciplinary process was not undertaken?
That is what I'm going to, Vuyo. The process it's not the case that the process is not undertaken. And Mwazi is not being extricated from a process of being held accountable. But I was giving you a context of what the law or what the processes of council prescribe. Mm-hmm. That one, the issue which relates to Dr. Mwazi is the first factor is that there was a draft report of the SIU which made certain preliminary findings against Dr. Mwazi. The second fact, which Luxolo does not mention, is that there is a High Court order judgment which was through a court case which was instituted by a private entity as it relates to the findings of the very same SIU report. And in that particular judgment, if you read it, it makes findings around the role that the SIU played or assumed in that particular process of investigation. One, citing that it assumed a role which was of a judicial nature, not a statutorial one, that when it makes findings, it is supposed to refer issues to the relevant law enforcement agencies. On the basis of that and the issuing of the final report, two critical things have happened, Vuyo. One, council has taken the process to court to present the High Court judgment, to present the final report, and the points of contradiction and contrast amongst them. Two, Dr. Mwazi herself has taken the process further through calling for a review of the process. Now, a finding in the SIU does not preclude her from being appointed by council, as council would be acting in a prejudicial manner towards her. That is the first fact for you. The second fact is that once that particular process of the court is concluded and a determination is made, Dr. Mwazi must be subjected to the internal disciplinary board of the municipality for it to make a determination on whether has she conducted herself in a manner which is consistent with what the code of conduct prescribes for. So what you have here from the UDM, what you have from a Democratic Alliance is a case of putting the cart before the horse. Coming to the motion that Luxolo makes reference to, that is the very same motion, Vuyo, which a legal opinion was presented by the Speaker in Council to say there is everything wrong and illegal with this particular motion. Because one, this issues before the courts, in essence it is sub judice. But number two, you can't have a motion of council which wants to encroach on an independent process of a panel, because the process of recruiting a city manager is an independently driven process itself. So there's no running away of the cart or running away of Dr. Mwazi to be held accountable. But there are processes which are underway here, and that is what the UDM and the DA must familiarize themselves with, because the council cannot act in a prejudicial manner. And again, I would want to submit on national television, it is a fallacy that there was no declaration from Dr. Mwazi. It is contained in the report of council that there was a declaration that they have in their position. But what you have here, Vuyo, and what you are witnessing is a propensity from the Democratic Alliance and its friends to want to collapse this particular city. Because the fact is that when this particular coalition government came into City Hall, we were able to unearth question of irregular contracts which were appointed in this city.
Okay.
There are officials in these 3 months which have been subjected to the very same process that Luxolo makes reference to. And now what you are seeing is a fight back because those particular reports, they have been concluded.
Okay.
And
now,
there's a forensic element to those investigations.
Okay.
So,
now,
and we are quite certain. You can cut my, you see, William, before I learn this point, culturally, I've got what they call in native. I've got a half a pink. You can cut my second finger off. They kid you not, once forensic investigations are done, there are certain key political figures from the Democratic Alliance and the UTM which are going to be fingered in those particular reports.
Okay.
That is what we're confronted with here.
Okay, let me stop you. Let me stop you right there. I mean, Morne Steyn, you've heard what Loyolo has had to say about the SIU report, the disciplinary process that ought to have followed. You have heard his views on both, but also on the process that was undertaken, which eventually led to the appointment of Dr. Nwazi. Do you have a different account or view or position on the three matters as he has raised them?
Well, yes, of course. It's actually quite preposterous for the ANC and their coalition partners to even assume that the SIU report, commissioned by the president, due to the rampant corruption which occurred with PPE matters in this country during the pandemic, and the pandemic we are still seeing the tail end of. The SIU report was commissioned to deal with these various matters, and we as a city decided we're going to set this aside. We're not going to take action on possible allegations of corruption and maladministration of our city. I find that absolutely shocking, and I actually argued this in council at the time when this motion was unfortunately passed by the ANC and their various coalition partners. So I don't believe that the assertions made by Mr. Ngakula that the SIU report is in some way flawed. We have no... he makes a baseless allegation in this regard. He has made mention to the fact that there was a court judgment where the SIU and the Hawks were actually castigated by the court. The reason for that was due to process, not as a result of the merits of the matter. The merits stand that there were allegations of misconduct and wrongdoing and found by and then fingered, as he uses the word, in the SIU report. The court order actually spoke to the Hawks not having authority to stop payment to these persons. And the reason for that is procedural, in fact. If the procedure had proceeded and the SIU investigations had proceeded as it should have done, and action had been taken and disciplinary matters had followed, those payments wouldn't have been due in any event. So it's unfortunately baseless. And Mr. Ngakula makes various baseless statements about them being the watchdogs of corruption, so to speak. But any corrupt activities found was found by us, and we have brought this to the fore for investigation.
Dr. what needs to happen now?
Yes.
What do you think needs to happen now? Because yes,
the majority of Nelson Mandela Bay councillors affirm was even her appointment as Ngakula alluded. That appointment was irregular because more or less it is very clear. By the time that they tabled that motion, most of the councillors were not there, and the council rules stated very clear.
Can I chip in there? Because now, I mean, we have run out of time, and I want all three of you to take us forward now and not to restate your issues and problems. What I'm saying is there's a stalemate right now, right? And the consequences of this is that you have 1.2 million South Africans in limbo, not knowing what to do. They go to some municipal offices and they can't find officials. Officials themselves have to take orders from, two different municipal managers. People who, on the account of one of your councillors, Mkhuseli Jack, had to come for appointments when those appointments were not made, were not honored. Now, that's chaos. It just means that, no one seems to have learned from everything that has happened over the past few years. And the people who are suffering are the people of that metro. So I'm less interested, for the purpose of this part of this conversation, in you or anybody, Morney or Luyolo, restating your positions. Take us forward, please. What do you think needs to happen now to break this stalemate and get things to get back to normal?
Vuyo, what we will do, we are going to petition the Speaker to quickly call an urgent council meeting where we will bring this item of the city manager back and deliberate it so that, Speaker, a democratic process could take place, Speaker. We feel that, Speaker, because it's a majority of councillors, 70 councillors of Nelson Mandela, have been denied a right, Speaker, have been denied a right to deal with matters of importance. You understand, Speaker, that we understand that services are stuck, but as soon as we call a council meeting so that councillors could quickly deal with this matter, the better.
Okay.
So as of tomorrow, as of Monday, we are going to submit a petition for a quick meeting to resolve this particular matter.
Okay, Monestein.
Vuyo, yes, thank you. In short, I think Paula has put the position there in, but we have an acting city manager now. And the really essential matter that the city needs is the appointment of a competent, permanent city manager. That's what we all want, so that we can have political or stability in the administration, so that we can have accountability, and that matters can be dealt with on an institutional manner. The matter of the
Luyolo says that's what they have done. So how are you going to get past that one?
Well, it hasn't been done. We dispute that. And we have rescinded that. A council resolution has been made to rescind that appointment. So we now need to bring this item back, where we can then, as Nkola has said, discuss the matter, have the majority of councils actually have their input raised on who the city manager should be and whether any of the shortlisted candidates actually are acceptable to us in order that we can make an appointment. And if needs be, go out and find a competent city manager. But this can only happen if you have a competent government that actually carries the needs of its citizens to heart and doesn't try and use JIC to whitewash its problems.
Luyolo?
Vuyo, I think, just to state categorically clear, if they move from that premise, it's a pure legal issue now. What is currently happening now is that the executive mayor and the city manager, Dr. Mwazi, are in the Port Elizabeth High Court. A declaratory order is being sought so as to evict the illegal acting city manager was appointed in an informal gathering in the council chambers. Anele Kaba, he's a refugee there, he's illegal. He will be evicted and evacuated from municipal premises. That's the first thing. Number two, the mayor will lead a process of just bringing sanity so as to clarify the local standing of the decision of seeking a declam or an order to make a determination as well around the correctness or incorrectness by law of the appointment of the city manager. Because at the end of the day, the reality is that council has got different interpretations. The various political parties have moved from a different premise in terms of their viewpoints, and it must be the courts which adjudicate on the matter. The other thing which must happen is that a council meeting is going to be convened before the end of the month to deal with the question of the passing of the adjustment budget so as to ensure that service delivery reaches our communities. That is something which as African National Congress we've got a fundamental interest in, because parties such as the UTM will not have that interest because they do not provide a political account anywhere.
Okay, very briefly, just for the sake of clarity. So you are not interested in what Lukolo was saying, council sitting. You believe that the courts should settle this matter once and for all. That's your departure point.
No, council will sit, Vuyo. Vuyo, council will sit. Council will sit, but the issue is that now it is a legal matter because council is not an island outside the South African jurisprudence. Council is subjected to the laws of the country. Council exercises its authority within the limits of the laws of the land. That is why, because there's no clarity. We are clear as African National Congress that a city manager has been duly appointed through legal and procedural means. But we're not afraid as African National Congress to have the decisions that we've supported in councils subjected to scrutiny, you must ask yourself, why is it the DA is not running to the courts? Because the Democratic Alliance knows, and it's got the facts that there's nothing wrong with the appointment of Dr. Mwazi, but it chooses and wants to send this city into a state of disarray. So we're saying again, we'll provide leadership as the African National Congress and approach the courts and compel or engage the mayor to approach the courts so as to seek a declaratory order to make a determination around the legality or on the correctness or incorrectness. And them as parties in council will be part of that process to furnish the courts with whatever relevant pieces of information which they may have.
Okay,
so
and that's where we're going to leave it, Leolo. Thank you very much for your time, Leolo Ngagula, who leads the ANC in the region at the moment. Morne Steyn is the spokesperson of the DA caucus in council, and Luxolo Nameta is a councillor of the United Democratic Movement. We've hardly scratched the surface. There are clearly deeper issues there, but the biggest fear, the biggest problem right now is the chaos that we've seen over the past week from that part of our country. Municipal offices closed, locked, councillors barred from entering municipal premises, 1 minute, 2 municipal or city managers or people claiming to be city managers, both issuing orders left, right and center, delegations, business and diplomatic who arrived at the city for their appointments had to go back because without meeting their host. A really chaotic state of affairs. Hopefully there'll be a solution sooner rather than later. Well, to this story that has been keeping us talking over the past few days, Public Protector Busum Kwabane daring President Cyril Ramaphosa, saying he must withdraw his letter warning her of her possible suspension. That's what we look at when we come back after this short ad break.
Daniel Debray is a meat and potatoes man, and he does not approve of the salad and cocoa thing. But look, a meteor. Oh, shame. Whatever this year brings, just roll with it. Get a case of Castle Lager 340ml handies for only $199.99. Only from Topset Spa, not for persons under the age of 18.
How do you predict the future? How do you plan for a world that doesn't...
Welcome back. The Public Protector wants the President to withdraw his intention to suspend her because, she says, the President is not legally entitled or competent to take any steps against her. Last week, President Ramaphosa wrote to Mkhwebane to ask her to explain why he should not suspend her in terms of the Constitution. All this coming after the National Assembly Speaker, Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula, informed the President that Parliament was continuing with Mkhwebane's impeachment proceedings. All to make us make sense of it all is legal expert Kitumedzi Piri. Good evening, Kitumedzi. Thank you very much for your time this evening.
It's a pleasure, Vuyo. Thank you for having me.
I don't know what you make, of the turn of events this week. I mean, over the past couple of weeks, we've been talking about, from the time the President then sent the letter, on the back of the letter that was sent by the Speaker, and then now the response of the Public Protector. Make sense of it, or just what is your understanding of what is going on here?
Yeah, I think, if we start with the President and the position he's adopted, he's certainly entitled in law by the Constitution, and it is exceptionally clear that where the head of a Chapter 9 institution, such as the Public Protector, is subject to proceedings to remove her, he's entitled to suspend her pending the outcome of those proceedings. And obviously that was precipitated by the letter from the Speaker of Parliament saying the impeachment proceedings will be proceeding given the judgment of the Constitutional Court that has found that those proceedings will proceed on a constitutional basis, obviously subject to the protections given by the Constitutional Court to ensure that those proceedings are fair. So now what the public protector is doing is really, in truth, misguided, because from a legal perspective, the president is acting according to the powers conferred on him by the Constitution. Whether he is being investigated on separate matters by the public protector has absolutely no bearing on this particular issue, because the power he is exercising does not call into account the matters upon which he may be investigated upon. The crux of the issue that Parliament will be considering ultimately, and not the President, is whether the public protector, or rather Advocate Mkhwebane, is fit to hold the office of the public protector. And that has been called into question by a number of court judgments against her in how she's conducted herself in that office, as well as how she's applied the law. So, you know, it's ultimately a process that is out of the president's hands and in the hands of Parliament. So whether the president has a bias or not doesn't really feature in this particular instance.
Now, and that is important because we are told that her letter, or her lawyer's letter, to Ramaphosa says, and I quote in part, and I quote, "The reason is that the president is personally, heavily, and multiple conflicted in this matter due to various investigations which have recently been or are presently being investigated by her against or concerning allegations of breach of ethics and or violations of the Constitution." In other words, she says, that's the basis on which she is arguing that the president is not entitled to suspend her. She then goes on to say that it is common cause that the president is also fingered in a few other current investigations involving equally serious and impeachable conduct. I think that.
Yeah, I mean, it is a complete red herring, and it's really to divert away from what is actually in play. Parliament has commenced these investigations into the public protector's fitness to hold office, which stem from the back of a number of legal judgments that have come against her in her conduct. I find it hard to make the link between how a number of courts that have found the public protector's conduct wanting and not of the standard that is required of a bearer of that office somehow commingle with whatever the president's status may be in respect of the investigations that are being conducted by her office. So to me, that is a complete red herring. It's to divert away from what the essential issue is here, and possibly, buy as much time as possible for the public protector, and possibly to complete her term of office around October next year, without these impeachment proceedings being instigated, or rather completed, against her.
Now, I've seen people on social media making comparisons between what we're dealing with here, what is happening now, and what happened during former President Jacob Zuma's time, where he was found to have been, implicated, and because of that, then the powers to decide, which were the president's, and he was a president at the time, had to be taken away from him because he was the implicated party. Are people who are thinking like that correct, or are they comparing like with like?
Yeah, that is certainly not a case of comparing like with like. The two matters are very different, because in the first instance, you had then public protector basically saying that I have made a finding against you, and to the extent that that finding basically means that there's a recommendation that there's a commission of inquiry to investigate these matters against you. And naturally, you cannot appoint a person to investigate these matters against you. In this particular instance, Advocate Mkhwebane made findings against the president. Those findings were taken on review and were found not to have been made in law, all the way up to the Constitutional Court, who made the ultimate pronouncement to say that Advocate Mkhwebane did not approach this matter from a legal perspective. So there's no legal basis as we stand for those comparisons to be made. And also, what is at stake here is the public protector's conduct, whereas previously, the public protector's conduct was not at stake. It was the president's conduct, whereas in this particular instance, it's the public protector's conduct. And that suspension is only to give effect to a parliamentary process, is to maintain the integrity of the parliamentary process. I don't think it makes any sense for the public protector, sitting public protector, to be investigated for misconduct and still be sitting in her position. I think that will really denigrate against the institution and not protect the institution as a constitutional institution. So certainly in that particular perspective, I think it behoves the president to ensure that the integrity of the public protector's office is maintained throughout this process.
And that's where we're going to leave it. Thank you very much for your time this evening, Gitumetse Phiri, who is a legal expert trying to make us, allowing us to make sense of that situation that we have no doubt, not heard the last of this. We're going to see how it pans out. The public protector has given the president until Wednesday to respond to her letters. Well, South Africans are still really in shock after news came out that renowned artist Mama Esther Mahlangu was attacked at the weekend, and her gun was also stolen. Well, Professor Pitika Nduli pays tribute to this heroine, and that's, we leave you with a little poem that Professor Pitika Nduli wrote after that shocking experience. From us as the team, the Watchdog team, it's a good night.
When I think of you, I wear the colors of the rainbow. Mama Esther, at 87 years of your life, you travel the whole world with bright and dazzling colors in your eyes to tell the world that we are indeed the children of the sun. We are the children of the sun, sprung from Earth's cradle muta as tortoise, from the constellation of the planet of the red dog. Now, you lie there on your mat, battered, punched, strangled, left for dead. How can we sleep when greed runs rampage in our beloved land? Words freeze at the corners of my tongue. I remember 70 years ago, as an old 10-year-old boy interpreting to American tourists about the murals that you and the other women of the Ndebele clan were painting. You said, we paint with colors born of our soil, washed up when torrential rains fall, and we paint new murals, but we know we do not paint forevers, but demonstrate that we can forever create it.